Hello and welcome everyone to the kickoff of Docs in Progress 2020 Community Stories virtual this year film festival. We really appreciate you joining us for our opening night and the Q&A for the film Resisterhood. I'm Erin Essenmacher. I'm chair of the board of Docs in Progress, and on behalf of the whole board and the organization, we really appreciate you joining us this evening. We have about 45 minutes to an hour for our Q&A. We'll be taking your questions, so please pop them into the comment section here. I have a few questions for our panelists first, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time on your questions. And I'm excited to introduce our esteemed panel. We're going to have a great discussion. First is CJ Crim. She is the director of Resisterhood. Welcome, CJ.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks, Erin.
And then we have two of the subjects of the film with us, which is always super exciting. So Margaret Morrison.
Hello, it's great to be with you.
Hi, Margaret. And then we also have Mimi Hassanein.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you tonight.
Hi, Mimi. And we are especially honored to be joined this evening by Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman?
Hello, Erin. Delighted to join you.
Hi, thank you for making time. We're calling a little bit of an audible. We were going to do about 25 minutes of Q&A and then turn to your questions, but Congressman Raskin has to leave us at least for a little bit at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to tee up one question just to get us started, and then we want to turn to your questions to make sure that we get to some of them before the Congressman has to go. So be thinking about your questions and please pop them into the comment section. So first of all, CJ, congratulations. It was a really beautiful film, really a shot in the arm, I know, at least for me. It was very inspiring to watch it, especially right now. And so that's kind of where I want to start. I'd like for each of you to talk about, as you reflect on your activism on the themes of the film and the 2 years that it covers from the election in 2016 through the midterm election in 2018. When you think about that time in the context of where we are now and the election that we just went through, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are you thinking right now? What are you hopeful about, and what concerns you, and how are you thinking about your activism through the context of where we are? So, CJ, let's start with you.
All right. Well, I can say that I am much more optimistic, hopeful, happy now than I was a few weeks ago. I started thinking after the 2016 election, you know, as so many of us were so shocked, what can I do? How can I help to try and bring about a change in the direction it seemed our country was heading with the election of this of our current president? And so I thought what I can do, since I'm a filmmaker, I can make a film that can hopefully tell the stories of people who that the president as a candidate actually attacked on the campaign trail. What were those people going to do in response to that attack? And so what I wanted to do was really show that as Americans, we are all Americans. We're all here. We stand for and with each other. That's what I wanted to show. And I hope that the film shows that through these just amazing subjects that were in the film. So I'm feeling much more positive now. I would really like to move on with this, you know, having the president-elect being able to actually access everything that he is able to as president-elect, but we'll get there. I'm very confident that it will happen. It's just, you know, frankly, what the president is doing is something that I think we probably all realized he was capable of. It's the rest of the members of the Republican Party in Congress that are frankly are shocking me. So hopefully they will start to take this in stride, and we'll all start moving on to a much better place.
That's great, and lots to unpack. You talked about the wonderful subjects, which I think is a great segue. So Margaret, let's go first to you and then to Mimi. How are you feeling in this moment, and what are you thinking about in terms of all the work that you've been focused on?
I met Cheryl Crim the day of the Women's March, but prior to that, I had been an activist for all of my adult life. And so when we were on the mall with those hundreds and thousands of women and men with us, I felt that I was not alone. I was with a group of like-minded people who, like me, were fighting for justice for everybody in America, not simply for Black people, but for all people. And so that was this solidarity that was there that has driven me from 2017, that day on the mall, until the present day. When I'm with the Resisterhood and when I meet the people that we met throughout the 2 years of filming, it reinforces my idea that together there is nothing we can't accomplish. And I still have that feeling today, even though, unlike Cheryl, I'm not surprised at what I see in the Congress, because it's what I have always seen in the Congress in terms of what a Black person is looking for. So that doesn't surprise me. The people, many of the Republicans in the Congress today are the same ones who were there in 2009, who were there on the same day that Gingrich met secretly in a DC restaurant, planning to disrupt everything that Obama or the Democratic agenda stood for. And they were correct in that assessment. They did everything they said they would do, plus some, which leads us to this point. We've made a lot of progress since then, but we haven't made nearly as much as I hope we will make. I'm not disappointed to the extent that, everything is lost, because I have to remember that fighting for justice is a never-ending process. Just when you think you've gotten something done, you have to take a step back because something else interferes with that progress. And that's what being an activist is. You never say never. You always are going. You always are trying to advance the notion that we, as a United States of America, and especially for Black people, we have been the primary ones pushing this idea that in the United States, that we need to live up to our Constitution. We, more than any other racial group, has led the fight, whether it's a civil rights movement or even before. And so I can't be pessimistic. I'm an optimist. And I know that something good is going to come out of it ultimately, but only if we all stick together and demand what we want, demand a change. So I'm looking forward to, the inauguration of January 2021 with the WON. And I'm willing to fight for everything that I know we deserve as a people, Black, white, Indian, Chinese, Asian, whatever. We deserve it. And if we all pull together, we can accomplish those goals. I've already sent my contributions, financial, to the Georgia, to both candidates and also to Fair Fight. So I'm eager. I'm ready to fight now, tonight.
Well said. It reminds me of what President Obama said: progress is not a lightning bolt, and I feel like your lifetime of activism really underscores that. Mimi, briefly to you, same question, and one thing I would just underscore: I really appreciated, the way you show up in the film. So much of what you stand for is about building bridges and trying to find commonalities. I love the way you talked about knocking on your neighbor's door and learning how to make a samosa, for example. How do you think about that, especially as someone who is seeking to build bridges and find unity at a time when it seems like that's in short supply?
Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I'm thank Congressman Jamie Raskin and Chair, everybody here for giving me the opportunity to be here. As an immigrant, I learned about activism here in America. And, as you always hear, America is the land of opportunity, the land of freedom. And that's why people come here from all over the world, for even better job or better education or whatever your dream is. So it was always known to any immigrant that this is the country where you make your dream comes true because of the democracy that's here. But I always also know that there was a racism, the issue about the black and white community. And I was always wondering, why is that? Why people are being judged about their skin color? Why they've been treated differently because they look different? You know, I just never can comprehend that. I said, well, they didn't have a choice of how they look. They didn't have a choice of their skin color. So why they are punished for that? You know, if they have a problem, they can ask God, you know, not them. So I start doing that work, try to really build the bridges between the different community and look for what's similar among us. Often we look for what's different about you. Well, enough is enough, okay? We need to embrace the diversity because in each country, in each person, there is a special flavor that you can taste that flavor. And there is so much spices around the world. Just enjoy teaching the spice of that person and the country they came from and the history, because we all have a lot of history. I am from Egypt. We have thousands of years of history, you know. So I am all about building bridges because for the next generation, I want my grandchildren to be able to cross those bridges safely. And we need to get rid of this orange man. I call him the orange man in the house as soon as we can. And we need to have our democracy back. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. I think that's a good segue to you and the work that you're doing. You have a unique purview on how we think about where we are and what's ahead. Would love to hear from you about, you know, just how you reflect on this in this moment.
Well, for me, it was a profoundly moving experience to watch this film. CJ, congratulations on creating it. It was quite extraordinary. It filled me with pride because I think everybody on this screen right now is a constituent of mine in Montgomery or Frederick County or grew up there. And Mimi, I know very well. Margaret, I don't think I've had the good fortune to meet you, but I'm very moved by all of your remarks and your extraordinary activism. So I want to get to know you. But in any event, it brought me back to those early days. You know, to me, I do mark this period not on January 20th when Trump made his awful speech about, you know, what did he call it? The American rot or the American decadence or, you know, sorry.
Carnage.
American carnage, right? And of course, that was prescient on his part because it prefigured all the carnage that he would bring to us. But in any event, I don't think of it on that day. First of all, I skipped it. I was very proud to have gone off with John Lewis, and I brought some of my constituents. We went on a big hike through Rock Creek Park. I can't remember if you were there, Mimi, or not. And then, I don't know how many of you guys saw his dreadful inaugural address, which, I mean, it was really a nightmare. And I suppose it would have been better in the original German or Russian perhaps, that they sent it over in. But in any event, for me, it really began with the Women's March because, first of all, we assembled at the Silver Spring Civic Center. I don't know if you came to that part of it, and we took down 1,800 people on buses. We rented 27 buses, and there was just this extraordinary sense of solidarity and community that I experienced the entire day at the march and all the way through. And it made me sad watching the movie, and not because that sense has dissipated, because I don't think it has. I felt it again in the 2020 election and organizing, but because of COVID-19 and the way that Trump's lethal recklessness and indifference to public health and human life has wrecked family life and social life, people's ability to congregate and assemble. And of course, there have been direct attacks on the First Amendment. Just think about the nightmarish assault conducted by Barr and Trump in Lafayette Square, where they basically violated every single one of the 6 rights contained in the First Amendment: the right to peacefully assemble, the right to petition government for redress of grievances, the right of freedom of speech, the right of free exercise of religion, the right not to have an establishment of religion, as Trump, in his typically awkward and inept way, tried to fuse church and state by waving somebody else's Bible upside down. The freedom of press, as they knocked cameras away from the TV people and so on. But just the extraordinary violation and burdens on people's ability to associate most intimately, to the point where, the Centers for Disease Control yesterday told people to stay at home for Thanksgiving. Don't travel. Don't go to be with your larger family. I mean, it will be years before we recover from the wreckage of this authoritarian and nihilistic assault on the American people. But the 2018 election demonstrated that we could organize and we could fight back. And as you know, we took the House majority, 235 to 200. Those first 2 years of mine in Congress, that's when I first got elected, the same night Donald Trump did, they were very tough because we were, the Republicans had a royal straight flush. We were in the minority in the House, in the Senate. They had the White House. They had the Supreme Court, which of course they've been gerrymandering and packing with their people for many years now. It was really tough. And they totally trampled our rights in the minority in the House of Representatives. So when we took it back, it's like we developed some oxygen and some space. And that's why there's 600 bills sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, like the $15 minimum wage and the universal background check on violent criminals for the sale of firearms, and HR 1 and abolishing gerrymandering and having independent redistricting commissions in every state, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to end all of these scoundrel voter suppression tactics the Republicans have been perpetrating on the people, and on, but nothing has happened with them. So that was our frustration. And the idea, of course, was that the 2020 election, we would take it all back. So I experienced the semi-victory of the 2020 election like CJ did. I mean, it was wonderful to see the greatest number of Americans ever vote for president, the greatest presidential popular majority ever for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But it was very scary to see 70 million people, 10 million more people than had voted for Trump last time, vote for him this time. And of course, that swept in all of these right-wing Republicans running in red districts that we had captured from them in 2018 when Trump wasn't on the ballot. And it is a terrifying prospect to contemplate that we, knock on wood here, we've taken care of Trump, but we've not taken care of Trumpism. And the country remains deeply divided and polarized. And what we thought was going to be the struggle of a lifetime in that 4-year period may just be the struggle for the rest of our lives.
I know that you have to go. I want to tee up my next question, and if you have time to stick around and answer it, great. If not,
this is too much fun being with everybody here.
Okay, perfect. Great. So my next question, which might seem a little bit like a hard right turn from the conversation we were just having, but I think it's important because I know that this is also a big part of what drives all of you, which is what's giving you hope right now, or what do you, with so much that clearly is heavy, right? What are you? Where do you see the biggest opening, and what are you most hopeful about, or what are you looking forward to in terms of where the administration is going? So we'll start with you, Congressman.
Well, for me, that's an easy one. My late father used to say, when everything looks hopeless, you're the hope. And I have found the hope in, a million acts of creative resistance and struggle by filmmakers and citizens and immigrants and artists and writers and so on. But I take great hope from this young generation, which seems way beyond racism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and sexism and misogyny. And unfortunately, they're a little bit beyond grammar too. I think that's because of all the technology. We got to work on their writing skills a little bit. But it's an extraordinary generation, and they are politically engaged, and they've been transformed by what they've seen. These are kids who are growing up with the sense that democracy is not some kind of divine permanent gift. It's something you got to fight for every single day, every year, every election. And so we did get millions more votes than they did. The problem is that the more pluralistic, progressive communities are clustered together. When I speak to the kids at colleges, I spoke to the kids at GW the other day, and they said, "What should we do?" I said, "I'm going to give you the advice I give to the 6-year-olds in soccer. Don't bunch. Not everybody has to live in Brooklyn or DuPont Circle. Go to North Carolina and go to Georgia and go to North Dakota, especially because, so much of commerce and life now are going on through Zoom. Spread out. And take your 20 best friends and move to Nebraska. We're coming close in Nebraska to turning a couple different congressional districts. Go to Alaska, and we obviously have to fight not just to populate all of the states with progressive people who are fighting for democracy, but we need to admit the new states. We need to admit people in Washington, D.C. who remain a community of 700,000 tax-paying draftable U.S. citizens who are the only community living in a capital city on earth who are disenfranchised in their national legislature. And we got 3.5 million people in Puerto Rico who are disenfranchised. And so that's got to be high up too. So I guess I'm getting hope from the new generation. I'm getting hope from the idea that democracy has got to march on. Tocqueville said in Democracy in America that democracy is either always shrinking and shriveling and hollowing out, or it's expanding, it's deepening. And so I think that the movements that have grown up during this period, which are the heirs to the civil rights movement and the women's movement and LGBTQ movement and the environmental and human rights movement, these new movements are going to expand democracy and deepen it. And people should make no mistake about it. Donald Trump and the corrupt, self-serving interests that they advance, they're on their way out. They really are. And the new America is struggling to be born.
From your lips to God's ears. Thank you so much for making time to join us and for being a little bit late to whatever's waiting for you. It was so wonderful having you here. Thank you.
Margaret, Mimi, CJ, Erin, thank you much.
Thank you. That is, we have some great questions coming in from the audience, but I do want to hear from the rest of you because I think it's such an important point. And CJ is such an important part of your film, right? There is so much hope in your film. So Margaret, if you don't mind, I'll go to you next. What, with everything that we're, holding that's so heavy right now, what's giving you hope?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Congressman Raskin just stated about the young people. And when I think back to Memorial Day, when George Floyd was crucified, and I saw the outpouring of outrage by people of all colors and religions, because we all witnessed with our own eyes a crucifixion that did not need to have happened, simply because George was Black. And that's the theme that weaves itself through American history since 1619. And we have never been able to solve that problem. And it is so embedded in our DNA that it takes one generation after the other to make inroads. Congressman Raskin mentioned John Lewis. And when I think of John Lewis, this person, this courageous person who throughout his young adulthood until his death fought for the right of all people to be treated as just basic human beings, starting with the right to vote. And I was so pleased to be a part of that generation that did end up in Montgomery, Alabama, that March of 1965. And I felt so hopeful then along with all of those other people with me at that march, that something significant had happened, and it did. And yet, come 2013, they gutted the Civil Rights Act. It was almost as if they cut a part of me away because I had fought so hard to get that act together. But back to hopeful, all of these things brought hope to me. Those young people out on the streets today, and have been month after month after month, fighting for the same things that I have fought for all of my life, give me hope. I know that things will change. And so when I saw John Lewis on Black Lives Matter Plaza, standing on the street with those words written in brilliant yellow writing and passing the baton to those youngsters, I have no doubt that we're about to see a change that is for the benefit of all of us. So I will no longer be marching for justice and equality. They will have brought it to us, like my young grandnephew in the documentary. He has an early start. Young people like Dallas and all of the others that give me so much hope, gives me hope for a tomorrow's promise. I know it's coming. So yes, I'm still the optimist, but I think I'm correct in my assessment.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I have goosebumps. And yes, there's so many gems in the film, and your grandson was certainly one of them for me. I love that you brought up John Lewis, because I feel like all of you in your own ways are the embodiment of good trouble. And with that, Mimi, let's turn to you. What's giving you hope from where you sit?
What's giving me hope is that to see the result of the election. Now we have Joe Biden, and we have, for the first time ever, women are being elected as the vice president. I always say, they always say, we need to empower women, and, we need to give them a seat at the table. And I said, you know what? God give me the power. I was born with the power, because we are the one who give birth to those men who are being the president, and we're the one who teach them how to tie their tie, how to tie their shoes. So don't tell me I need to be empowered. If I can run my household, I can run the whole country. And that's what I am hoping, that all the women out there, all the immigrant community out there, wake up and smell the coffee. Enjoy the democracy in America. Learn about the civic duties that you have to do. Learn that you need to make sure to vote. I think it was clearly that everybody voted this time. The immigrant went out and voted, because we took it for granted. I mean, when you immigrate here to America, you just want to have a nice car, a nice way of life. You want to enjoy the luxury that you have here. But we really never engage and learn about the our civic duty. So we are always on the menu. We are never have a seat at the table. And then people eat us, and they said, oh, this baklava was so delicious. And I said, yeah, the baklava was so delicious, but now I will have a voice. Now I'm going to have a seat at the table and tell you what I need you to do. So I'm hopeful, because the people are start opening their heart. The people are start connecting with each other. The people are start realizing that building a community is the core and the body for the whole society. You can't fight by yourself. You have to belong to a community. I remember when I immigrated here, and people used to tell me, you need to be a part of the community. As an immigrant and as from Egypt, I said, what do you mean a community? When you tell me be a part of your community, my community is my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother. And they said, no. Being a part of your community, being a part of your PTA, your civic organization. What's this have to do with being a part of the community, So I finally learned what does it mean to be a part of the community? And when Congressman Jamie Raskin would say that we need to people go outside the Washington, D.C., yes, you can build your own community. You can be a part of your new family. So I'm hopeful because the people spoke, and I'm hopeful because under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we will continue to have our great dream, our great freedom, and America is opening her door for everybody to come here and enjoy life. Thank you.
That's well said. There have been so many good tweetable moments, but I think if I can run my household, I can run my government. Is my new favorite for tonight. We have lots of great questions coming in from the audience, but CJ, I would love to hear from you briefly on that same question before we turn to these.
Oh, sure. What gives me hope are Margaret and Mimi and Dallas and Jean and Congressman Gutierrez and his daughter Jessica and his wife Zoraida and Joanna, the people in the film. But I see each one of the subjects of the film as representing 100,000 other people out there who are ready to stand up and say, you know, we need to join together. This country means something. It stands for something, and we're going to get it back. And I think that Margaret and Mimi are just beautiful examples of that drive and that desire and that inspiration that we've been to the world until this last 4 years. We've been that shining city on the hill, or at least the aspiration of, that I think people want to get back to, and that gives me hope.
All right, I want to turn to some of these great audience questions, and I'll start with this one that's for you, Margaret. What advice would you have to younger activists who are looking at all the amazing work that you've done and want to get involved the way that you have?
Well, first of all, to be an activist starts with one simple thing: knowing what it is you want out of representatives that you send to Congress, or to your city council or to your board of education, being aware of the issues of the day. And when you're 18, the first active activism is the vote. So when you vote, that's an act of activism. You're well on your way. And when you take that one step with that first vote, and you volunteer, and you knock on doors for somebody else who's running for office, and you stay involved, and you encourage others to be involved, you participate in marches, you write to the people who are representing you with your likes and dislikes. You tell them how grateful you are because they are your representative, and they are voting the way you want them to vote. All of those encouragement. Every time you react with another person in the act of making America a better place, you are an activist. And so I say to those youngsters, keep on doing what you're doing, and you're well on your way to making the United States the place where we should all be at this point, believing in the dignity and intrinsic value of every single person. So I applaud those people, those youngsters on the street, and they have been week after week after week. Just keep doing what you're doing. You make a difference.
Perfect. Well said. Mimi, this question is for you. And so much has happened since then. I feel like I always joke around that we're living in dog years, and watching your film, CJ, just was a good reminder of why I feel that way. But I know it's been, it was so early on in the administration and so much has happened, it can be easy to forget. But when the Muslim ban first went into effect as one of the first acts of Trump's presidency, you know, there was so much fear and outrage, and obviously for you, incredibly personal. So how did you overcome the fear that the ban instilled in you and your family to continue on with the work that you were doing and with your candidacy?
It was really scary moment for me. I mean, after 9/11, people used to ask me, aren't you scared about wearing your scarf? I said, no, it's a part of me, and I just don't, no, I'm fine, you know. So, but when Donald Trump started running, and you know, he encouraged all those people to say the wrong stuff, and because he was the role model for doing everything wrong, you know. So there was a lot of people who came above the ground. They was usually under the ground and couldn't come up and speak and say their point, and now he validated them. So that made me scared. I was scared about my life. I was scared about my family. I had my sister who wanted to come and visit me, and I said, no, don't come, because it was unsettled period for us. Being a Muslim, you know, sometimes I will be scared wearing my scarf in public because I didn't know what this person is gonna think of me. You know what I'm saying? But on the same time, even though I was scared, I wasn't gonna lock myself and don't say something. You know, so I always educate people about why do I wear my scarf. I always try to find a way where I educate them about the Muslim and about Islam. And Muslims are not terrorists, you know. And so I always say education is your passport into integration. So if you really want to integrate and learn about diversity, remember I said we need to embrace the diversity and taste the flavors of the spices. You really have to educate. And what I love about the American people here, they're hungry for education. Just give them a book. They'll read the book. So I always say, and instead of fighting an argument and you're never gonna win, educate. Education is your passport into integration. So you really wanna live in peace and harmony and learn that there is God who will judge us after we go under the ground, not Donald Trump. And build the bridges. So we will be able to live happy and enjoy life together. And I'm hoping that we can educate more. And education is the only way to overcome any misunderstanding or any problems that people have. That's just me. Yeah.
That's great. What advice do you have, I guess, for all of you, for students or professors whose voices are being silenced in classrooms right now across the country? So maybe let me tee this up. The one downside to not having live Q&A is you don't always know the intention of the questioner, but I think the way that I interpret that is, how do you think about free speech in the context of the fact that we're so polarized, and how do we have conversations about these issues when it can be difficult to hold an opposing view, or things are sort of characterized in such extreme terms. CJ, let's start with you.
Yes, well, that's a really tough question, and that's the most important question I think we have right now going forward, because the biggest thing we need to do is bring our country back together. And frankly, I come from a very conservative family. My brothers and my sister all voted for Trump, I guess. I haven't asked them, but I'm 99% sure. And that's part of it. I'm afraid to ask them. We have a wall of what we can and cannot talk about. And I have to figure out how to bridge, because I'm very curious. I mean, I would like to understand them. I would like to have these conversations. And so we have to overcome that fear, and we have to approach it not from a oh, I'm talking down to you, or, how dare you, kind of a standpoint. So I don't know. I think the biggest thing we need to do is not be afraid to speak our minds. The question, I think, came from, professors and students who are being silenced. I hope that's not true. I do know, just very quickly, I'll say we had another subject that we were following in this documentary for 2 years. It was a Jewish woman, and she worked for the federal government. And in 2018, the Trump administration sent a letter to all federal employees saying you are not allowed to use the words resist or resistance in the same sentence with Donald Trump, or your job could be in jeopardy. Now, it was rescinded. They had to take it back. We have a thing called free speech in this country. But this woman was so afraid of losing her job that she withdrew herself from the documentary. And she told me, she goes, I understand I'm being silenced. She goes, I'm a Jewish woman. I know this is how Hitler got started. But I need my job. She goes, she goes, I really, it's not even my job. I couldn't get another job. I can't lose my health care. It's a whole nother documentary right there. But that woman's voice was being silenced. And she was angry and frustrated, but terrified by this administration. So now that we have a new administration coming in, everybody needs to get out and speak their mind and do it in an open-hearted way. Mimi said in the documentary, open your heart, open your mind. We all need to do that from all sides. And I guess that's where we need to start. We just have to have the courage to be able to have these conversations with each other and not attack each other from either side. And hopefully we can start healing. The biggest thing we need to do is figure out how to dissolve these bubbles that we're finding ourselves in, where we're only getting certain information. And my family, I'll talk to them, and they have the Fox News bubble, and they have, there's not a lot that penetrates that bubble, and we have to figure out a way to get rid of those news little compartments that we're in.
That's great. I think it's such an important point. Just to clarify a little bit, and actually it's a great segue to you, Mimi, and then you, Margaret. The person is saying, she's talking about her students and teaching her students how to use their authentic voices. And I certainly feel like the idea of authentic voice and personal kind of story certainly comes through in the different ways that you're each advocating. But how would you speak to that? Just if somebody who's thinking about, as you're talking to younger people, you touched on it a little bit before, Margaret, around activism, but about that idea of speaking up even when things are scary or things are polarized.
That's a great question. I was a teacher for many years, a public school teacher. And so I'm aware of the lack of racial equality materials that start from kindergarten. People don't know about the history of the United States. People don't know about slavery. People don't know so much about what threads through all of American history. So it's not unusual then for people to make assumptions about what they've seen in a movie, about what I should be or how I should act, or in a comic book. So the issue is difficult. The Project 1619 project is beginning to answer part of that, but that's only a beginning. And so a person will believe what they thought they saw in a movie, a Black Sambo or whatever, without realizing how it connects to something that occurred in the 1630s or the 1640s, or the blackface that has come up recently with the governors participating in it. Something tells me that if at the very beginning, as a kindergarten or as a first grader or a third grader, this had been woven through all of our text as to what slavery actually meant, we might be in a different situation today, but that has not happened. So we have a long way to go. In terms of, if I were in a classroom, I'd have to start with facts, and I'd have to assign books that dealt with nothing but facts, and from there conversations can begin. And I would assume that I would have students speak with honesty about what they thought, and I would be in a position with my factual knowledge to let them know that that is a fact or that's not, or why don't you read this and see if that will clarify some more issues for you. But we have a long way to go because we've been 400 years into denying what is actually a fact as it relates to Black America. So
Yes. Well said. And for those of you that don't know, Margaret's referencing the 1619 Project, which is a great podcast series and a series of resources that really digs into these issues. Worth checking out. Mimi, what about for you in terms of thinking about using your voice? I mean, you touched on it a little bit in your answer to the previous question, but how do you think about that? Because I think one part of the power of what you bring, among many things, is your authentic voice and your own personal lived experience.
For me, I believe very much in giving the opportunity to every single human being to speak up and give them the opportunity to say what's in their mind. And then at the same time, be respectful to what they have to say. You may disagree, but that doesn't mean you need to attack them. You know, God created us all different for a reason. Life will be so boring, believe it or not, if we all look the same, if we all ate the same thing. I mean, there is a reason that we were created different, you know. So we need to give opportunity to everybody to speak, to everybody to say what's in their mind. But in the same time, we have to get this information with open mind, with open heart, and really respect them and give them that chance to say what's in their mind. It's not one cut fits all. It's not one dress that you will just put it on me and it's gonna fit. No, you're gonna tailor your ideas. You're gonna tailor the subject. To be able to give the opportunity, the information the correct way. We're not all the same when we're learning. Our learning style is different. So you must be able to really tailor the way you talk to every community with the way they understand it. Remember, I said in a documentary, I didn't speak a word of English in the beginning, but how come I didn't speak a word of English and now I am an elected official, right? I had the confidence, I was determined to do it, and nothing was gonna stop me. So when you have the confidence when you're speaking, then you put your mind to it. You're going to cross any obstacles that comes your way. But having the confidence and also having the open heart, the open mind. Don't just have the confidence that I am going to get this done, like Donald Trump. Yeah, I'm going to get it done regardless of what. No. There is a middle way because it's not one cut fits all. So again, I hope that people will learn how to work together, and food and art are universal language. If you don't have any subject you talk about, start talking about food. Start talking about art. You will bring the whole community and everybody will gather around you if you start talking conversations about that. And instead of getting in politics, and then you can talk about politics. You can talk about education. You can talk about culture. But your first step is food and art are always a universal language. So this is your gateway to open into a conversation.
That's great advice. I know we only have 10 minutes. There was one other question, which that was actually a great segue to Mimi that I want to make sure we circle back to, and then a couple of questions for you, CJ, about what's next with the film, and then hopefully we'll have a couple minutes for some closing thoughts. But Mimi, you're talking about building bridges, and there was a question earlier about kind of the way I interpret is kind of the intersectionality of some of these issues, whether we're talking about environmental justice, COVID, obviously things like COVID and what's going on with the environment disproportionately impact minority communities. I guess I'll kind of extrapolate that into the way that I think about it, which is I feel like there's an opportunity in a lot of these issues to get beyond the Republican, Democrat, the CNN and the Fox News to find out, to get to the core of what are the outcomes we want? What do we want for our families? What is the way that we want our country to function? And I'm curious from each of you, as you think about all the issues that we're facing as a country, where you see beyond art and food, which is amazing and always a good place to start. But where do you see those openings where we might be able to weave more common threads and to build some bridges? Margaret, maybe I'll start with you if you don't mind. Oh, can we unmute her? Thank you.
I thought about this question quite a bit. And at the same time, I don't have an answer for it. I know how I feel. I know what I want. And so when I go to the polls to vote, or when I'm researching a person's beliefs about something that I will vote for, I want to know whether or not that person believes in science or not. I want to know whether or not that person believes that $7.25, the minimum federal income, is sufficient or not. Should it be raised? I want to know if that person believes that legislation for safety gun control should be a part of the agenda. I want to know if that person believes that an LGBTQ person is a human being with all the rights and privileges of everybody else. I want to know if that person believes that comprehensive immigration reform should be an actuality. I want to know if that person believes that taking children and babies from the arms of the brown parents and put in cages or something they condone or not. I would want to know whether or not that as a woman, I have the right to control the decisions that affect me and my health. I want to know if a person believes that veracity and morality and honesty and just good basic common decency are attributes that our leaders should possess. So I want to know a lot of things. And I believe that across the board, many people would believe, as I believe, that some things are universal. And yet sometimes I believe that maybe I'm incorrect, because I look at 70 million people who voted not for any of those things that I described. They still don't believe in science. They don't believe that wearing a mask makes any difference whatsoever. They don't seem to care that children are put in cages and some will be separated from their moms and dads for the rest of their lives. They don't seem to believe that gunshots were actually fired at little children at a school, that was all make-believe. And so I vacillate. The pendulum swings from one to the other. But ultimately, I believe that when we encourage those people who believe that their votes don't count, if we can add them to our list of voters, I believe we will have a larger contingent of people who are willing to say, yes, science is real and we should not do this or that. And I believe we will be making progress. I'm still that optimist because I believe those people who don't vote tend to believe that that vote doesn't count. And I'd like to speak to that audience to tell them their votes matter just as much as they matter. And when they vote the way their heart tells them to vote, they help us make the world better. And a second thing I'd like to add, when you vote, you have to vote all of the time. You simply can't vote during a presidential election and miss a midterm, because when you do that, you defeat all of the attributes and good legislation that had occurred during the presidential election. So an activism and an activist is a continuous participation in our representative democracy. You can't just do it once every 4 years and sit back and relax. It's ongoing. It's forward moving. It's every day. It's with your city council. It's with the primaries. It's with midterms. every time there's an opportunity to vote, I want to tell those people who've never voted, make a difference. You help us make the world better simply with your presence and with your vote. And so those two things, and I'm encouraging those in Georgia who may be listening or who have friends who can relate this information to those people in Georgia. They will make a difference in the outcomes that will affect not just our current generation, but for the children to come. We need to tackle climate change. We need to tackle a lot of the issues that are dire, including COVID-19. And so we have a lot on our plate. And I think collectively we can accomplish a lot of those things if people will simply go out and vote.
It's such a good point. I feel like you have to look no further than what just happened in Wayne County, Michigan, where all of a sudden these, county commissioners have a lot of power, right? So I think that point about looking at being involved all the way across the board is important. Right. Also, I will say we know that Joe Biden is our oldest elected president, but based on the comments, if our audience has their way, Ms. Morrison, you would be the next oldest elected president. We're getting a lot of Morrison 2024 comments.
I'm ready.
CJ, we brought up Georgia. I do want to talk about that, but and I know we're running out of time, but Mimi, I just want to give you a chance briefly if there's anything you would want to add to where you see the opportunity to build bridges, and then CJ will talk about Georgia and the next steps for the film. Oh, can we
yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah. I totally agree with what Margaret just said. Voting is very essential, but for the immigrant community, that's something that we don't really know too much about it. When I immigrated here, first thing I wanted to do is to learn about the American system and make it work for me, not against me. And we immigrate here for the freedom, but guess what? There is nothing free in America except buy one, get one free. So the only thing that to really enjoy your freedom, you have to understand how the American system works and make it work for you. And a part of it is essential is the voting and the civic duty. And then you really will enjoy living in America, practicing your freedom, have your voices heard, have a seat at the table, all the stuff we talked about. So I totally agree with what Margaret said, and I might be the vice president when Margaret becomes the president. So
I get on board with that ticket. CJ, we're sadly running out of time. I know we still have some questions left, but I do want to, I think this is a good note to end on, which we've gotten a couple of questions about what's next for you, but specifically, and I know we talked about this before we got started, looking to the next immediate thing on our collective plates, which is these runoffs in Georgia. How are you using the film, and what can the audience here do to help you use the film as a way to continue the activism?
Oh. Yes, thank you so much. And yes, we are trying to get, and if anybody has any connections in Georgia, we are really trying to use the positive energy of the film to get out the vote. Now we have this vote in Georgia to try and get control of the Senate, and it's so important. The latest polls I've seen, both of the Senate races are pretty much dead even. So anything we can do. I personally am so happy I don't live in Georgia right now, because those people are going to be buried in postcards. People are going to be knocking on their doors, calling them, and I'm afraid they're just going to be overwhelmed. So what we're trying to do, what we want to do with the film, is hopefully bring the film to Georgia and get the positive energy of Mimi and Margaret and the other subjects in the film to try and really reach to people and show them how important the vote is. Show them how important it is just to get involved. Everyone has the ability to write postcards, to run for office, to make a speech, to get out there and march in the streets the way Margaret has done her whole life. And so what we want to do is really inspire people. We have an opportunity right now. We're trying to get the film into a drive-in theater so that people can actually go and have an activity where they can get out of the house and still be socially distanced. It's difficult to get a film out during a pandemic, but the film is here to be given to anyone who can use it to help inspire people and make sure that their voice is heard. And so right now we are hoping to get it to Georgia. If anybody has any other places where they think that it can work, we hope to get it to colleges and universities, high schools, where we can show people how they can get involved. That's really what we're trying to do with the film. And having said that, the last thing I just wanted to make that just echoing what Mimi and Margaret said about getting out to vote every single time, all the way down ballot. Please, please, please vote in the midterms. We don't want to give up everything that we get in the presidential election just to give it up 2 years later. So it's really important for everyone out there. Keep voting, make sure your voice is heard, and get out there and find something that you believe in and go and support it.
Well said. Well, I feel like we could continue this conversation for another hour, but we're at time. So I just want to thank you all so much. CJ, thank you for bringing us your beautiful film. Mimi, Margaret, thank you all for the important, or both for the important work you're doing and for making time to be with us tonight. This was really just a delightful conversation. I want to thank all of you for joining us for the Q&A. If you haven't had a chance to see the film, or if you want to recommend it to a friend and watch it with a friend or send it to them, all the films as part of the film festival are available on demand, and it will be on our YouTube channel, as will this Q&A. The film festival runs through Sunday, and we have 24 other fabulous films touching on all kinds of important stories, important voices. So please check out the rest of the catalog. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Erin. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.